Hello and welcome to Tattvadeep, Conversations and Explorations. For our second episode, we sat down with mathematician Dr. Murty, member of the Royal Society of Canada, the Academies of Arts, Humanities and Sciences of Canada, which is the senior national council of distinguished Canadian scholars, humanists, scientists and artists. Dr. Murty teaches at the Queen's University, Canada, where he holds a Queen's Research Chair in Mathematics. He specializes in number theory and is a researcher in the areas of modular forms, elliptic curves, and sieve theory. He is also cross-appointed as a professor of philosophy at Queen's, specializing in Indian philosophy. Dr. Murty has authored and co-authored several books on mathematics. Some of the titles include Transcendental Numbers and Problems in the Theory of Modular Forms. He has also, along with his brother and fellow mathematician and member of the Royal Society of Canada, Dr. Kumar Murty, has written a book on the life of the genius Indian mathematician Srinivas Ramanujan titled The Mathematical Legacy of Srinivas Ramanujan. We talked to Dr. Murty about his interest in math, his current work, his deliberations on mathematical philosophy, and its influence in his life and work. We hope this conversation can help the listeners see math as something beyond the textbook, beyond the fear, beyond a sense of inadequacy, and see it for its tattva, its true essence, and for the intricate tapestry of numbers, symbols, theorems, which, when closely observed by the student, provide new ways to see the world and ourselves. So let's start the interview with understanding the choice that you made towards math as a subject. Because in the aggregate, it's not everybody can become a high-level mathematician, but even at school level, there's a lot of, people, we are scared of math. We are afraid of math. So how do we address, how did you address it in your life?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if I have to go back in time, that would probably be when I was a teenager. As a child, I suppose I was enamored by many great scientists. And of course, we study the life of Einstein and people like that. And one of the things that I learned to be a great scientist is that you have to know math very well. And of course, Einstein mastered calculus at the age of 12. This is what I heard. And so I think I was about 12 at the time. So I went to a bookstore and got a book called Calculus and tried to learn that. Now, I have a brother who's also a mathematician. His name is Kumar Murty, and he's director of the Fields Institute in Toronto at the moment. So we both, he's 2 years younger than me. And so we both thought, let's try to master calculus. And so we more or less taught ourselves. In fact, I remember the book that we got was called Teach Yourself Calculus.
Is it still available? Can people benefit from it?
Probably. Yes. I hope it's updated, but anyway, if it's certainly around, there's a Teach Yourself series. Okay. I myself may have a book on my shelf here called Teach Yourself Sanskrit, which I really want to learn. That's one of the regrets of my life, as it were. Essentially, being brought up here as a child and growing up here, you don't have access to Sanskrit like you would in India, and so that is one of my regrets. But the Teach Yourself series is has fascinated me since the age of 12. The fact that you can teach yourself many things if you're sincere. So we took up calculus at the, I was 12 and Kumar was 10, and we kind of sat through it. Of course, we prodded through, but by the time maybe 15, we managed to master it. That was the kind of like I think the lives of great scientists inspire youngsters. When you study the life, you don't need to know their discoveries, but if you like take Srinivas Ramanujan in the Indian context, Ramanujan came from the dust of India. Is a very poor man from rags to mathematical riches is what we could say about his life story. And he more or less taught himself many things, didn't he? I mean, he went to the library and got these books and taught himself many things. So I found that rather inspiring. Of course, I learned about Ramanujan much later in life, but at the time when I was 12 or so, I think I knew quite a bit about Einstein. And so I tried to emulate that, and you begin to learn mathematics, and then you fall in love with it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, you said that it was scientists, reading about scientists, kind of directed you to maths. And it's interesting in the case of Sir Sri Ramanujan, he was in a way directed by the deity, a goddess. So my question is, how much is maths in the realm of this, spiritual realm, and how does that affect us?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question, and it's got your question actually has many dimensions to it. So let's take it one step at a time. Of course, in the Indian context, you and I are both Indians, and in the Indian context, we have this rich culture, spiritual culture, which does talk about the higher dimensions of the human mind, and that discoveries are gifts of the Mahasaraswati, the flow of Mahasaraswati.
Yeah.
Whatever we discover. So it need not be mathematics per se. It could be in the literary field. It could be in the creative field. We always have this kind of, you being, of course, a Tamil person, darn well that we have this wonderful cultural reverence to Mahasaraswati.
Yes.
We don't begin any dramatic performance or any musical performance or any creative thing, even secular studies like mathematics. All of these are adornments of the divine. This is our attitude. And so it doesn't matter. And of course, you can move that even to the larger realm. And Bhagavad Gita, as I understand it, seems to say you don't have to confine, Mahasaraswati only to the creative realm. You can, everyday ordinary activities can be transformed into spiritual sadhana. Even cleaning the room or washing the dishes can be transformed into spiritual sadhana. This is the Bhagavad Gita as I understand it. So we have that attitude. So when Ramanujan talks about God as namakal, he's only tapping into that kind of metaphor. I don't think we need to take it too seriously as if some sort of, the Divine Mother, of course, inspires all of us. And this is the way Ramanujan would frame it. But I don't think there's any other kind of supernatural, if you want to call it that, dimension to that thing. So I think in that sense, Ramanujan framed it. I don't think we need to take that too seriously because we all identify with that kind of feeling that Mahasaraswati inspires all of us to do any creative work.
In India, we always respected books to be sacred, knowledge to be sacred, education to be sacred. For us, we understand that even to concentrate is worship, to concentrate, to focus on solving a math problem or reading, preparing for the exam. These are actual worship, rituals that one can imbibe and follow. In this context, could you please throw some light on the number 1728?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. That's an interesting number. It's actually 1729 that I think you want me to talk about in the context of Ramanujan's life.
Yes.
1729. But you're right, 1728 and 1729, both of these numbers, on one hand, figure prominently in Ramanujan's life. On the other hand, believe it or not, the number first appears in the Kurma Purana. In the Kurma Purana, the author, whoever the super genius author that wrote the Kurma Purana, is actually talking about dhyana and measurement of concentrations.
Wow.
So actually many of the Puranas have lots of numbers in them. Even in the Ramayana, you have these gargantuan numbers,
Yes.
So the point is, the idea, what is dhyana, what is dharana, what is dhyana, what is samadhi. So these are the last three steps in Patanjali's Raj Yoga.
Okay.
The concentration of the mind on a particular idea for a period of 12 seconds is called one dharana.
Wow.
Concentrating the mind for 12 dharanas is one dhyana.
Wow. Wow.
Concentrating the mind for another 12 dhyanas plus one more second is samadhi.
Wow.
The state of enlightenment. That's your 1729. That's 1729. Wow. So 12 times 12 times 12 is 1728. One more second beyond leads you to 1729 seconds, which works to roughly, I calculated, it's about half an hour. So if you can keep your mind focused on a particular idea for 30 minutes, you have enlightenment.
Sir, the next thing I would like to ask you is something about your area of work, which is number theory and modular form. Content online is getting better and better. You can learn physics, you can learn maths as well. But when I have to understand about modular forms, I do not have enough fodder, enough information that is digestible, to someone below the level of many levels below. So how would you, and could you please explain it? And if you have any ideas like the Ramanujan Yatra that you're part of, can that be scaled into other subjects as well?
Oh, yeah. So you refer to the Ramanujan Yatra. I think that was a documentary of sorts last year that somebody had asked me to speak about on the birthday of Ramanujan. I think it was December 22nd or 24th or something like that. And at that time, I was trying to explain in very lay terms the notion of a modular form. Whether or not I succeeded is not, it's the student is the test, of course. But for your for this moment, for this occasion, I can just say that modular forms are certain objects which seem to be everywhere. They were not discovered by Ramanujan, but they were certainly brought into the foreground by Ramanujan as being the most important function to be studied. And somehow, if you look at the evolution of mathematics in the 20th century, you will see that it's the development of the theory of modular forms that is now has been responsible for the solution of many problems, including, you may know about Fermat's last theorem that was solved by Wiles and Taylor in the 1990s. That work could not have been done without the notion of a modular form. So modular forms seem to be running the show. Now, what's interesting is on Ramanujan's deathbed, literally on his deathbed, Ramanujan scribbled a new theory called mock modular forms. So these are generalizations of modular forms. They're not just modular forms alone, but the generalizations of modular forms. And he's hastily scribbled this theory back in 1920 or thereabouts. And only now we're beginning to understand, almost a century later, are we beginning to understand the significance of those scribbles. And so these are called mock modular forms that Ramanujan had discovered. And it turns out many key, I'm not an expert, but many key ideas in the latest string theory, which is trying to explain, the theory of everything, or unified field theory, as they call it in physics, String theory is using mock modular forms in a very fundamental way. So all of a sudden, in order to describe the quantum physics of the black hole, you need the theory of mock modular forms.
Wow. And that brings me to another question, that these things just pop up, this need for solving or the attention that falls on a particular point in time or issue happens across time, suddenly in a century, then years later, centuries later in another time. So was there any other work between the time Sri Ramanujan made this wrote this theory, and when physics started using
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So yeah, there was. So the point is that early in the 1920s, Ramanujan made some conjectures in the theory of modular forms, which occupied the attention of number theory people, algebraic geometers, and so on and so forth. In fact, actually, you needed two worlds to be brought together in order to solve these conjectures of Ramanujan, the famous Ramanujan conjectures, and they were solved in the 1970s. And so the theory of modular forms began to develop in a substantial way, in a fundamental way, for half of the 20th century. And starting about 1980 or thereabouts, physicists started to suspect that the theory of modular forms has something to do with black holes and whatnot. And so that theory started evolving, and only, I would say, maybe 10, 15 years ago did we fully understand those hastily written scribbles of Ramanujan on his deathbed.
That's quite slow in time for people who have regular jobs.
Well, yes, but mathematicians have a regular job. Mathematicians, full-time researchers. Of course, we're teaching courses and we're teaching classes.
I understand.
And so on and so forth. But part of our job is to do research, and how research moves and how it progresses is, of course, not up to us. It's up to Mahasaraswati in some sense.
Yes.
And so, but we can only make the effort, and she can only give us the gifts of our, effort.
Why has nature chosen math to be its language?
That's a good question. You're not the first to say that, actually. I think Galileo's probably the first to say something like that, or maybe even Plato, or maybe even our, ancient, I think Plato was enamored by mathematics, saying, essentially coming to the conclusion that mathematics was God, and or that God is a mathematician. And Galileo would say that the language of the cosmos is written in mathematics. With all due respect to all these great minds of the past, I just have to say that mathematics is one of the languages that the cosmos is written in. It's written in many languages. I mean, I think the Divine Mother is not going to be so narrow. I mean, the manifold beauty of the cosmos, the creation of all these disciplines, whether it's literature, whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's mathematics, whether it's biology, whether it's engineering, these are all
the emanations of the deity.
Emanations of the divine. These are all. So we you see, the human mind, the cosmos is so vast. That we need, 1,000 eyes, as it were, to perceive the whole cosmos in its grandeur and beauty. And each perspective, each eye, as it were, is a subject, is a discipline. And there's really no clear, sharp division. This is where math ends. This is where physics begins. This is where they're kind of interdependent. They're overlapping. And so in that sense, spiritual life, in the true sense of the word, is an effort to try to appreciate the grandeur and the beauty of the cosmos. This is what the ancient rishis, I suppose, were saying when they talked about Satchit Ananda. Ananda is
bliss.
I don't think any other. Yes, well, bliss is the poor translation.
What would you call it?
Bliss would call it beauty. See, truth and beauty are wedded together.
Yes.
You see? And then, of course, the Indian idea is consciousness is at the bottom of everything, is the foundation. So Sat-Chit Ananda, it's truth, consciousness, and beauty. They're all not separate. They're all the same, but you're seeing them, for the purpose of understanding. You may see them in different ways. But that is how I see it. I see, I can commune with the divine through music. I can commune with the divine through mathematics. I can commune divine through you. The fact that we two are conversing is a miracle in itself. That miracle of miracles is the divine, as far as I can understand.
Knowledge itself, reading a book itself can be a very spiritual experience, or gaining knowledge of anything.
Absolutely.
I would like to move to something about genius. Sri Ramanujan is a genius. There's another genius, Shakuntala Devi. Now, for a common layman, they are geniuses. They are great math people. You can give them. But what is it? What is the meaning? What the kind of work Shakuntala Devi did? Why is she known to be? What is her work?
Okay, so I firstly don't know much about Shakuntala Devi, but I actually met her.
Lovely.
I met her when I was an undergraduate at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. Okay. She came to give a performance.
Okay.
And she's, of course, as you all know, she's a lightning calculator.
Okay.
Now, there have been documented, in various medical textbooks and cases of neurology where there are aspects of the human mind that we really do not understand. This thing called synesthesia, where you see numbers in colors and things like that. So there are people who are gifted, who have, in some sense, some different senses, as it were, that you and I don't have. That is, again, in my opinion, the marvel of the human mind. In some sense, there are many, many switches in our own human mind that perhaps have not been turned on. They're all there. The powers are there. We are not just tapping into them. But some people, either through accident or through genetic probabilities, are able to tap into these kind of abilities, super abilities. And she herself, actually, when she came and gave this lecture, I noticed two things. She had phenomenal speed at calculating. That was clear. These lightning calculator. But she also had a phenomenal memory. Mm-hmm. When she was introduced to, 40 or 50 of the departmental members with their names, she remembered everyone's names. And she would, in the course of her performance, she would immediately say, Professor Glapp, Professor Dixon, Professor this. How did she know that? I mean, this is back in 1975, I think, and there was no internet. You can't go around searching the web pages and memorizing people's names beforehand. So this is definitely a power of memory that she has. And of course, you would need power of memory in order to do some lightning calculation. So the mind is doing something. She herself could not explain how she does these things, but she did it. And at the same time, in the same lecture, she said, I'm not a mathematician. So don't confuse this with mathematics. Great. So it's a gift of the mind. Is it useful? In some cases, probably. But sadly, the way the world is that all she could do was give some sort of, circus demonstration around the world with these kind of things. But what fascinates me about her ability, is that what is it? We all have these abilities. We don't tap into them. Life is too short, and you and I are tapping into certain abilities and cultivating certain abilities. Therefore, we're good at those things. So in that sense, in my opinion, everybody is good at what they do in their own way. Of course, they're extraordinary manifestations of their abilities, and we call those people geniuses. But we don't actually cultivate the very powers actually that we have. And this is, of course, goes back to my earlier point about Raj Yoga and sadhana. The main thesis of Patanjali is that these powers exist and we just don't develop them.
We hope we do it. We start doing it now.
Well, I would say education in the true sense of the word, not education in memorizing things and regurgitating and getting a degree, but education in the true sense of the word, the love of learning, activates and amplifies the powers of the mind.
Thank you.
That's called sadhana. That's what's called sadhana in the yoga. Sadhana, practice, abhyasa yoga is called, yeah.
Great, and from talking to you, we can understand that you do have a philosophical bent of mind, and so when you think naturally, do you think like a philosopher or do you think mathematically?
That's a good question. I think in both ways. I've trained myself to think in both. So when I'm a mathematician, I do think mathematically. You have to be. There's a lot of technical language that's used, the technical symbology peculiar to mathematics has to be used. When I think in terms of philosophy, I'm always I have essentially the attitude of a child trying to learn things, because philosophy, I think, is vast. Probably philosophy in the true sense of the word is the subject. My understanding of adhyatma gnana, philosophy, the knowledge of being, and as they say in Vedanta, the idea of to realize yourself. You see, that the mystery is actually yourself. We are carrying the mystery right here, and that is the remarkable journey called life, the mystery of mysteries. We are the mystery, and in that sense, perhaps we try to use words, symbols, languages to try to understand ourselves. But of course, Vedanta would say everything is beyond any name and form. But at the moment, the mind only works through name and form.
Thank you.
Therefore, use as many languages, as many frameworks as you want. And as I said, it's, you need 1,000 eyes to understand. So you need all the things that you can get. So instead of saying, I don't do that, or I don't do this, try to understand it. Take the position of a learner, and then you will find that you will understand things. Something extraordinary enters your being and helps you along. Sincerity wins the day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That brings me to this name, Tat, because in Tamil we call philosophy as Tattuvam. And Tat is thatness, and thatness of the thing. Thatness. That's why we also wanted to call ourselves Tatvadi. So we call out names to show us direction, perhaps, in which way to go. Thank you for that, Doctor. And my next thing that we can talk about is math plays a huge role. It will play a huge role. We will know it more, and we will know ourselves more in the future as we proceed as a race, human race. I wanted to ask you, what were the significant contributions of math in the last 10 years, and what would you predict, if you have any predictions for the next 10 years, how math would evolve, contribute to the evolution of mankind?
Okay. So I think that mathematics progresses very fast, very quickly. I specialize in number theory, which is has nothing to do with numerology, by the way. We're not back to Shakuntala Devi. I'm more in line with Ramanujan. Okay, it's number theory, and in some sense, trying to understand numbers. And now, as we said at the very beginning, somehow it's a miracle of miracles that numbers can be used to understand the cosmos. I find that mind-boggling. This is what leads all the ancients to say, oh, everything is number, and that you make, mathematics God in that sense, because numbers seem to have some power in the power of understanding, unfold the power of understanding. Now, if you think about what are the basic numbers, well, you have all the natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And then you ask yourself, well, each of the prime numbers are the numbers that cannot be broken up as a product of two numbers. And so prime numbers turn out to be the building blocks. So if just as the physicists look for the structure of matter and try to identify the proton, electron, and nucleus and neutron and so on and so forth, the fundamental particles of physics enable us to understand physics. Similarly, in mathematics, the fundamental particles are the prime numbers. They seem to be governing the show. And how the prime numbers are distributed, what are their patterns, this is at the heart of number theory. And it's fascinated the human race since the dawn of time. And we still have not figured out all the things about prime numbers. There are many open questions. For example, are there infinitely many primes p such that p plus 2 is again a prime number? This is called the twin prime problem. We don't know the answer to that. We suspect the answer is yes, but we don't know the answer to that. And yet, we have made remarkable progress. But 10 years ago, you asked for, one of the striking achievements of mathematics. I would say 10 years ago, there was this remarkable theorem by Yitang Zhang who showed that, there are infinitely many primes p such that p plus something bounded is also prime. He doesn't know, he can't say it's 2, but he came up with a number, I forgot it, I think it's 700,000 or something, some number. And now we know that p and prime p and p plus n, where n is less than, I think, 250 or something, is also prime. So we're getting there, and that's a big step forward. But it's not necessarily solving the problem that intrigues the mathematician. The problem is the occasion for which you exercise the mind and use it as an opportunity to discover missing concepts. You see, for example, India was the birth of the concept of zero. Now, who would think that a symbol for zero as a number, not as a symbol, but as a number. As a number. I mean, the Babylonians had a symbol for zero, but they didn't treat it as a number. It's some Indian genius thought zero is a number. And only when you have zero as a number can you get the decimal system or any binary system or whatever. Any number system which has meaning can only come from the concept of zero. You can't get it out of the Roman numerals. There was no zero there. And you certainly can't do computations with Roman numerals. So the brilliant idea that zero is a number, not a symbol, a number, with which you can perform, just like you can add 2 and 2 and get 4. 2 plus 0 is 2. I mean, that's more profound. 2 plus 0 is 2 is more profound to me than 2 plus 2 equals 4, because it introduces this notion of zero as being very, very important. So zero is a concept. It's a fundamental idea of mathematics. And so we use problems, unsolved problems like the twin prime question, to exercise our own mind, to examine what is it that we know, what is missing. And slowly, by trying to solve a problem, you discover new ideas and new concepts, which will play a fundamental role for the rest of the evolution of mathematics. So the problem, even though which may look strange and esoteric, why do you care if they're infinitely many twin primes or not? No, the problem is pointing to a lack of understanding. And therefore, we will use the problem to kind of catapult ourselves into some sort of higher realm of consciousness in which we find the new ideas that are going to transform this, solve the problem. They may not solve the problem. They may at least amplify, and take us further, which, like in the twin prime case, we now have methods, new methods. So does that kind of give you an idea of, brilliant advances in mathematics in the last 10 years are taking us, have given rise to new ideas, which are now taking us to higher realms.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's as you make mathematicians sound like they are yogis and rishis who are actually.
They're what? What was the word you said? The yogis
and rishis and yogis.
Well, in anyone
sense.
who pursues learning, everybody is a yogi or is a rishi as long as you're pursuing the learning process in a sincere way. That's all.
That's all.
And if you make that attempt, you be, sincerely seeking something, there is some power, call her Saraswati or whatever, that energizes your mind and illumines it. And then you say, I know. So where did you get that from? You certainly didn't get it from your animal ancestry.
Now, coming to, again, back to practical things. One is 1728, meditate and enlighten yourself. That's very practical. The second thing is, in a complex world of today, we have people needing therapies more than ever. So can math be a therapy for people? It's definitely scaring people off, but can it be seen as a therapy for people?
Well, I certainly think that if the mind can be put on something creative, that is a good therapy. So, for example, if you look at the in psychoanalysis, Carl Jung noticed that when he found some of his patients having some mental turmoil,
made them paint.
He made them paint. Yeah, you're right. He made them paint. They draw pictures. They channel that energy through some sort of creative work, creative art. And I would say that is the essence, as far as I can understand, the worship of Saraswati, creativity. You write, you paint, you do math. So math is one of them. I wouldn't want to confine saying math is now therapy. Everybody learn number theory. That'll be great, of course. But then if everybody learns number theory, as the saying goes, everybody does number theory, there are no plumbers and we can't fix the leak.
Correct.
So we need everybody. We need the sweeper. We need the plumber. We need the mathematician. We need the musician. We need everybody. So, but the point is, the human mind is a channel of energies, you see, and the problems come with stresses and mental difficulties. We don't know how to channel that energy. And as you correctly said at the very, very beginning of this interview, there's a lot of information out there. You have all these things. We are really on information overload at the moment. And the point, the secret of life, as far as I can understand it, seems to be very selective. Don't overload your mind with too many things.
Yeah.
Find that which interests you. Okay, if it's not math, if it's music, take music. But take something that interests you. Don't take somebody else's word for it. Don't follow a set pattern. Don't follow set pattern, set religion, whatever. Don't follow that. Find something that captivates your interest, and find something that allows the energy that is moving through you to express itself creatively. Yeah. Even taking care of a family, I consider sadhana. I consider creativity. You see? Taking care of the family, sweeping the floor with full attention, enjoying it, doing it really well is creativity. So this is, I think you have to enlarge this meaning of creativity, as the Gita would have you think of it, as everything, whatever it is that you're doing. Do it as a sadhana, and enjoy. You have to find what you enjoy. You take up what you like, and that's it. That would channel the energies of the mind.
Karma yoga.
Karma yoga, that's exactly it. That's karma yoga in that sense of the word. That's what the Gita has always been saying. It's what you don't change your vocation. You stand right in the middle of the battle and do it properly. That's all. End of story. You don't even need to believe in God for that matter.
Yes. Do the next thing that's waiting to be done.
Yeah, and that's what exactly.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question that Disha also prepared, and a few things that she wanted to ask you. It's unfair that she's not doing this interview. I just kind of wanted to do it. She wanted to ask you this: what about math brings you the most joy? How does math make you happy?
That's a very good question. Okay, I'll tell you what really brings me joy. Teaching brings me joy. I struggled like you, like everybody else. I have struggled through life trying to learn things. I know the joy of learning. I found things very beautiful. I know the joy of learning. I know that learning can be hard. It's not, something that's joyful is not easy. So I've tapped into this kind of higher enjoyment of the mind, as it were, called learning. And so I enjoy teaching. And so we come back to our original point about teach yourself calculus. Captivated my imagination when I was 12-year-old.
Wow.
And there I was trying to understand things. And so now you also raise this question of modular forms as being very important in the work of Ramanujan. And so suppose now I was that 12-year-old in the 21st century, and I found that Ramanujan discovered modular forms, and they seem to have revolutionized everything. So it might be that I should learn modular forms. So I might try to go to the bookstore and try and find a book called Teach Yourself Modular Forms. Well, I have news for you. There was no book on Teach Yourself Modular Forms. So I sat down and wrote one. I think I might even have a copy. Wait a minute, let me just get it for you. So here it is. It's
wow.
In fact, it's Teach Yourself Modular Forms, Problems in the Theory of Modular Forms.
Wow.
And it's published by the Institute for Mathematical Sciences. I'm not trying to make a pitch for my book, but this is how I work. I look at the doctoral student trying to do research in mathematics. I have a bunch of PhD students, so you're trying to supervise them, and I see the agonies that they can go through because it's a jungle out there. There is no path. There is certainly no illumined path. It's a dark jungle. And you can step on all sorts of things. You can be devoured by all sorts of things. It's a dangerous jungle. So I consider teaching in the form of writing books that are easily understandable to be my sadhana, as it were. That gives me a lot of joy. That also gives me meaning. I connect with students and gives me meaning. And I think it's funny. It comes back to the teach yourself calculus thing. Yeah, I'm now trying to write books, teach yourself modular forms, teach yourself representation theory, teach yourself, all these higher things.
Wonderful. That's, thank you. So thank you for making things clear. For me, definitely, because when you are trying to do anything, it is the same set of problems that people face, and the same kind of approach, which is already prescribed, which for some reason is not being populated. It's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for your time, and we really enjoy talking to you. We hope to have more conversations in the future. And
my conversation with Dr. Murty helped me see mathematics as one of the keys to unlock the potential of the human mind, and also that a mind made well by the rigor of math integrated with other disciplines can perhaps help us understand our world through Sat Chit Ananda, truth, consciousness, and beauty. We would like to know your thoughts on the interview, and if the interview inspired your worldview in any way. Thanks for being here, and we will see you soon with another interesting mind demystifying another interesting topic. Until then, take care.